Right then, so this next segment is with Leonie Wroe, our guest here. Leonie built her family home on Buckinghamshire in 20, and carpenter oak were appointed for the structural frame that would form the main living space of the house. She chose a hybrid frame system, so similar to my talk earlier, partial frame, balancing the aesthetic and cost of the beautiful frames on display. And so over to you, Leonie.
Hi guys, I'm Leonie, thank you for the introduction. I live in my home with my husband and my child. We didn't plan the self-build route initially, I've always dreamt of it, but we had some land that we owned and a horse stud business, and we decided that self-build was the route for us.
So what inspired you to build the self-build home?
My family have done self-builds before, it's not something that I'm completely new to. And we had to be on site for the horse studs. Who doesn't want to build their own home? Like, you can have it how you want it. That was my inspiration.
So how attainable did it seem at the time?
I guess I'm an optimist. I think I knew there'd be hurdles. Planning is always difficult. But I think you have to see the long-term sort of. I didn't quite know what that would look like and what the finished product would be. And I think sometimes a little bit of an open mind is really important. So yeah, I think it was definitely something that I thought if we just kept chipping away, we'd achieve.
So obviously your family, as you started, the first go-tos for getting help?
My family had built before, and I've always had an obsession with properties. I worked in sort of properties and stuff for quite a few years, and we had gone round, all the different sites, the home building shows, places like this. The home building renovating show was where we started off. I will say that information is key. Any research you can do is so very important. It's your project, no one else's, and people can try and take over a bit or think they know best, but ultimately it's your home, and if you want it done a certain way, then you need to be in control of that. So yeah, that is what we did. I had all the magazines, I had piles of them for years. I'd keep going back, I'd get inspiration on Pinterest and all those sort of places. Knowledge is power with self-build, and it's all there for you in places like this. It's amazing. So yeah.
So finding the plot is often the biggest hurdle for self-builders.
We didn't buy the plot thinking we were going to build. We had it with the horses on, and as our horse business developed, we soon realised that living 20 minutes away just wasn't something that was going to work. So we needed to be on site and living there. It is a very difficult place to get planning on. It's in the green belt. It's it's a beautiful area. It's tough. It's doable. So yeah, that's the route we took. My parents in the past have done really sneaky little things, like they've bought a property that's got a really big plot, and they've separated some of that plot off, and they've used that to build. So there are lots of ways around it if you can be a bit inventive as well.
So your planning journey was not straightforward and somewhat lengthy, I imagine. Who helped with your planning application? Did you use consultants?
We definitely didn't get approval first time. Our whole process took about 10 years, and it wasn't your standard build where you're just trying to get permission. We did use planning consultants. I 100% recommend to find the best planning consultant you can get. Yeah, I'd say spend your money on a good planning consultant. Yeah, so I think the beauty for us, we were living on site. We actually lived on site in a caravan for 8 years. So our planning journey, actually, a lot of the difficulty was that, first of all, we had to put in planning for a temporary home while we proved our business. And that was actually turned down. So we had to go to appeal. And I think the thing about appeal is, if your planning consultant thinks you've got a good case, then you go for it, because I think they often just say no, and a lot of people go, okay, they've said no, let's walk away. But if you've ticked the boxes, then why shouldn't you do it? So we were in a caravan for 8 years. It was a long stretch. We had our child in our caravan. We got married whilst we were there. We had puppies, and it was all very manic, but I would definitely do it again. Yeah, looking back at that, it's crazy.
How you chose architects to work with your projects,
Yeah,
and how much input you
thank
had
you.
on the actual design process and journey.
Architects wise, because we'd been there for such a long time, we had a really good sort of idea of where we wanted things on the site. I think it's really important to consider your site, think where the sun's coming up, your best views, you know, what you want to make the most of. We have incredible views, we're very lucky, so we built a very long house to take in the views. We did originally apply for a 2-story dwelling. We weren't allowed that. We weren't allowed a 1.5-story, so we got a bungalow. And I must admit, when they said we had to build a bungalow, my heart sank. I just imagined the old-fashioned bungalows that are, you know, probably not the most beautiful, but you can have incredible bungalows. And actually, it was the best thing that happened because we got these beautiful ceilings and we got all the oak exposed, and it was just brilliant. So
Yes, so of course, a vaulted ceiling.
and so for us, the architect had a bit more input into our original design, which is the 2-story, because we were limited on the size we were allowed to build. When you build with equestrian or agricultural, you're only allowed to build up to a certain size property. So they were a bit more helpful with the 2-story. That was turned down at planning. So we went to a 1-story dwelling. And by that point, we were like, no. I mean, I used to spend hours just, you know, with cut out pieces of paper of sizes of rooms I wanted and moving it around. And, you know, you can do it a bit more technology wise online easier now. But for me, the visual really helped. And so our architect came along and made it work so that we could submit the plans. I will say that is really where our architect's input ended. We worked really closely with Carpenter Oak and the timber frame company that we use to sort of finalise all the designs and make sort of tweaks and make sure structurally it worked. If you're thinking about oak frame, then you need an architect that is aware of how an oak frame worked.
So just back to the resources that you used. You said going to the shows, the magazines. Is there anything particular that you found really useful, or was it a real combination of just putting the time in to get through the research?
So I think initially we started with the magazines just because you can get your head around it more. When you come to these shows, there's a lot to take in. So I think sometimes it's nice to, for me, it's nice to have an idea of what I'm interested in, but maybe keep an open mind. We actually met Carpenter Oak at one of these, I think it's the home building renovating at the NEC. And I think you just get a feel of someone. We wanted to work with someone that wasn't trying to sell us something off the shelf, you know, something that's already designed. We wanted to very much design it ourselves and have a real, you know, like this is our home and no one's got anything like this. This is our design and what works for us. And Carpenter Oak were really open to making your build unique to you and sort of discussing it through. So I think for me in that stage, and we went back a few times, like we didn't limit it to once. And also it wasn't just at the beginning, like a little way through we went back because we were, you know, looking at even like sliding doors and stuff. The array is incredible and getting the wrong one is a costly mistake.
So when did you decide that you wanted an oak frame? Was it after?
No, I was always nervous personally that a new build would be like a cold, with no soul, you know, heartless building. I wanted it to. I like the traditional old farmhouses with character, and I just felt like the best way to do that was to use oak in a new build home.
So you had your heart set on some oak framing from day one, really?
Yeah, my concern always was that whether we could afford to build with oak throughout. So we actually went for a sort of a hybrid, if that's what you call it, of timber / oak. We have our oak in our main areas, and then we just have a little bit dotted about, like in our master bedroom, we've got some nice oak. But a lot of the frame in the other parts of the house is just timber and not seen. If I could, I'd probably build it all in oak, but you know, real life, you can't always afford to do that. So you don't have to just have it everywhere.
Yeah, that's very common. As per my talk earlier today, like the majority of our projects are hybrid. They're all hybrid structurally. So even the very large aspirational houses, as I've worked out, tend not to have open utility room, for example. Yeah. So your build route, as we call it, self-managing, project managing, turnkey, of course, being relatively expensive. What build route did you do? Do you project manage it yourself? And if so, how did you go about choosing all the different suppliers?
I very much project managed it myself. I'm an absolute control freak, and I have developed previously. So we converted a big house into flats, which I project managed and was on site every day for. So it was always something that I would be completely in control of. Yeah. For me, there is no other route. My parents actually, interestingly, didn't project manage their own building. They've done 2 homes and they used a builder to manage theirs throughout. Trades, I think recommendations, words of mouth. We have had already where I'd done some flats, got a few key, really good trades that I trusted. I project managed it, of course, but I definitely, no one knows everything about a build. There's so much new stuff coming in all the time and technologies and challenges on that site. And so you need ideally to get yourself a really strong team around you that you trust and you can pull information from and you can be sort of pull it together. Yeah.
I often tell people it's down to time and inclination if you want to project manage your own build. But I guess you juggled that with running the business on site at the caravan at the time.
Yeah, huge advantage living on site. You're totally in control. Our caravan actually looked out onto our house, like literally. I was there all the time, and yeah, I project management. I think it's for me, I've in the past had sort of builders say, "Oh, no, you've got to do it this way," and because it was easier for them. And ultimately, it's your home, and if you want it a certain way, then that's how you should have it. So I needed to be there making sure that they weren't making decisions for me and then it becoming too late and being stuck with something that was someone else's choice. Yeah, so I have a young family, so another important aspect for me was that I really wanted my living to be separate from my bedrooms. I didn't want it to be, a chaotic. You've got a bedroom there and a living space there, and then so we very simply designed our house that we've got our bedrooms, our bathrooms, and our sleeping spaces in one end, and then all of our living spaces are on another end. So even though we aren't on 2 stories and you don't get to go up to bed at night, there is a separate area. So, if we have friends over for dinner, my son can still be at the other end of the house and doesn't hear us. So I think planning your space to work for you as a family, everyone is different in how they live their lives. But for us, that was really important. And we didn't waste spaces with lots of corridors and, going off, because space was really, as I said, we were only allowed a certain amount of space. So it was really important to us that we used all the spaces well.
So obviously in this beautiful kitchen open plan area you've got the oak frame. Can you tell us what the roof and walls, the rest of the house are built made out of?
Yeah, so we've got a mix outside. We kind of, because I think because we've got horses and stables, and obviously we've got stables up there, we wanted the finish of the exterior to be very complementary to the surroundings. So we have a mix of oak cladding and then also brickwork. So because it was such a long building, we didn't just want one, just brick all the way along. The architect did really help us with that, to split up the different areas. And so that's worked really well for us. We've allowed our oak cladding to naturally age. And we've also...
So looking at these sliding doors, they're quite a key feature to the house. Was supporting them, was there steel work around them to kind of stiffen that aperture? And what really made you go for that particular manufacturer?
Yeah, so we had to use a steel. It's a 9-meter opening. We use these guys to install the doors ultraline because they offer a really slim frame, and we designed the kitchen so that each section of the glass sat behind the oak. So when you walk into the kitchen, it just really looks like glass behind the oak. I did have to sell a kidney for those doors, but I would say they're well worth it, and they are heavy. But they are, when you open it up, it looks brilliant. And another thing we actually did is we put UV glass into them. The sun is on that for most of the day and it gets really hot. And so the UV glass, it helps protect the oak as well, I believe. We've left our oak natural, we haven't treated it. You've just got to think about your paint colours, because the green, you can't visually see it, but there is a slight green tinge from the UV, and it does affect your paint colours internally. So when you're choosing your kitchens, make sure if you do go down that route, you have that inside your room, because it is does give it quite a different look.
Yeah, it's quite an astute choice. When we do direct glazing, we always specify solar control glass. And nowadays, you're beholden if you want to build in such thermally efficient buildings. Overheating is a key consideration. So any large areas of fenestration, especially at the point where I say the southwest, it's just good practice to use solar control gas. And some of the interior finishes to your property. How did you decide upon that? How did you put that together? Did you work with mood boards?
Yeah, I mean, Pinterest is your best friend, I think. Instagram, there's so much inspiration out there. Visiting, places like this, even they have it in kitchen showrooms. It's all so readily available for you, and you can just choose what you want to do. We actually had everything in our house painted white when we moved in because we were very much at the end of the budget and finances were pretty much non-existent at this point. We had all our woodwork actually sprayed. I don't know if you can see this, but in a colour. So it just worked really well, and we celebrated the oak, really. It was the main feature of our home. We're starting to add a bit of colour now, so that's interesting. I love our chimney. It's probably quite a personal, different feature, but I saw it in a magazine. I've never seen a chimney like that, and I just really liked it. My plasterer didn't like me because it wasn't the easiest thing he's ever had to do. But yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people try and create a house that looks like it's got chapters in this story. Say like an old conservation work. Every house tells you a story and it's trying to read the chapters in it. So this makes it look like it wasn't a rebuild. So what's your favourite part of the house if you have to pick one?
It's got to be my kitchen, I think. It's just the heart of the home. The kitchen was always going to be the biggest space, the space we lived in, space with the doors. As I said, we've got beautiful views and we can go out. We look down over the horses, and it's just like the hub of the family home, isn't it?
So we're doing again. What would you choose?
I would put air conditioning into my kitchen. It's hot. I'm shocked by how hot the space gets with the glass. Our bedrooms, even though there's quite a lot of glass there, it's not as bad. But I think as well, because there's nowhere for the heat to go. We've got Velux windows in the roof, which if you're building one story is a really good idea because heat rises and you can let it out. But it is still a really hot space. We considered air conditioning at the time, but we live in England. You think I'm a bit crazy putting air conditioning into a house, but the kitchen is unbearable at times.
Is there anything else you wish you'd known before you started?
I wish I'd built a slightly bigger utility. I think we have all underfloor heating, and all our underfloor heating manifolds were meant to be in the boot room, and it had been designed by the underfloor heating company, but they decided that it didn't quite work there. I'm sure it was an ease thing on their behalf, but they moved a lot of it into my utility, and it's a really boring space, but quite an important one, especially when you've got a young family and the mud and the horses. And so I wish that space was a bit bigger. Our land is very much on sand. And so we didn't realise at the time, because we'd lived there and we'd built stables and we'd, built other things, but we didn't realise actually where we built the house, there was pockets of clay. So we then had to change our foundations, which felt like throwing another £30,000 into the ground.
Is that the most challenging part of the whole build? Or
financially, probably, yeah. It didn't make a huge difference, but there were challenges throughout the build. We'd booked some brickies for a job that we'd used before and were brilliant, and they got called to a development, and it was a year's worth of work for them, so they couldn't. I appreciate they couldn't sort of do ours, but then the brickies we got were cowboys, and they came recommended, but yeah, they were definitely cowboys, so I had to ask them to leave. And there's always going to be a drama, but you just have to just ride it. It is so very worth it when you've done it. It really is.
So conversely, what was the most enjoyable part of the build? What did you have the most fun with?
I just think being able to be in control of your home, it's your choices. I find it quite fun. It's stressful, but honestly, I find it really enjoyable. I encourage anyone to do it. And I really enjoyed it. I loved watching the frame go up. You see it on the floor and you think, God, it's so small, and it always looks so small when you just see the foundations, and then suddenly the walls go up and the frame goes up so quickly. you've suddenly got a house there and you think, oh, I'll be in soon. Obviously you won't, but if it does feel like that. So that is a really enjoyable part. And of course the finishes, when you get to put your nice kitchen in.
Yourself, it's that controlled process.
Yeah. I think just being able to design your home how you want it, you know, the storage where you want, or, you know, things like that. Storage is always forgotten about. We do need cupboards and stuff to put things in, and yeah,
So I think we're pretty much there today. We have a few minutes for a Q&A. What's the main key piece of advice you'd give to people who think about self-building their own home?
Research. Honestly, if you think you know it all, research some more, because there's so many different options of ways to do stuff. And if you approach someone and you know what you're talking about, they can't pull the wool over your eyes, and you know, they can't say, no, it's not that, you can't do it like that because it's easier, or you know. And so I think it's researching the companies that you're working with, you know, getting examples of the work they've done, and always get at least 3 quotes because they vary hugely, and it's not always the work or the quality that, you know, tie in.
When I used to tender out work, I'd go for 6.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd say do your research, and also don't leave everything to the last minute because it costs you more money. You need to be 5 steps ahead of what's happening in your build.
Thank you. Is there any other sort of nuggets of wisdom you'd like to pass
Oh
on?
gosh, I don't think so. No, I think that's fine.
Well, I'd like to open the floor if anyone's got any questions.
It's 180 meters squared. Yeah, for some reason, if you're a farmer, you're allowed 200, but if you've got horses, you're allowed 180. So we've got 3 bedrooms. We could have gone for 4, but I'd prefer to have slightly bigger rooms.
Thank you for sharing your experience. I know you said it was a long project.
So yeah, from start to finish. And we also built during COVID. We didn't start our build during COVID, but halfway through COVID hit. So it's probably a bit longer than halfway through, but we'd got all our structure, luckily, all of the oak was up. But yeah, so the whole project wasn't overly long. It was actually the planning that was the difficult part for us. Yeah. And I think because we'd done so much research before, I kind of knew everything. We were almost ready to go as soon as they said, you can build. I'd got it all there mapped out. I don't. Is that a thing? It's for me. I don't.
Even more expensive.
I mean, that was all we could afford, and I suppose they are heavy, but I can open them, and it's very much about the care. It was explained to us when we installed them that you have to keep the runners really clean. The runners sit externally, so if you get leaves and all the stuff in them, they also say that you should use furniture polish because it allows them to glide more. It waxes them through. So yeah, they're and I mean my son who's 9. I mean he's quite strong, but he can open them. But I think my mum would probably struggle now. They are heavier. You'd want to try them out really to get a good idea of them. But they're such a big unit. They're going to be heavy. So I don't know. Would I consider electric? The problem for me with everything, my husband's only real input in our house was that he wanted the technology of stuff, which I didn't really want because in previous builds, I've learned that technology dates so quickly and breaks. And the maintenance we have where we are anyway with the horses is just huge. Like, you know, the gates, they're always breaking and the bill is always thousands rather than hundreds. So for me, I think it would just be another cost. We do have electric Velux windows though, I would recommend those. Yeah, maybe a wind up one. I'll get the horse out to pull it open, yeah.
Well, I guess we're just about on schedule. It's brilliant, you know, a minute early, better than being a minute late like the other ones. So, well, thank you very much for being with us today, Leonie.
I think I've turned it off. Oh no.